Dad, I am sorry, but you were not invited. Please go away. You will ruin the aesthetic. Those were the words my daughter Tiffany said to me as I stood outside the venue I had paid $500,000 for. She did not look at me with love. She looked at me like I was a stain on a silk dress. I did not scream. I did not beg. I simply turned around and walked away. 1 hour later, every single payment for the wedding was canceled. The flowers, the catering, the venue, even the lights. No me, no wedding. If you have ever been betrayed by the very people you sacrificed everything for, please hit the like button and subscribe. It helps this story reach others who need to know they are not alone. And before I tell you how I turned the lights out on my ungrateful family, let me know in the comments which city you are watching from. My name is Thomas Blackwood. I am 70 years old, and I thought I was driving to the happiest day of my life. I was wrong. I was driving to my execution. The salty air of Newport usually calms me. I rolled down the window of my 1990 Bentley Turbo R, letting the Atlantic breeze hit my face. This car is a lot like me. It is old. It is heavy. It consumes too much fuel. But it is built to survive a bomb blast. My daughter Tiffany hates it. She told me to rent a Rolls-Royce for the wedding, but I refused. I told her that a man does not arrive at his daughter's wedding in a rental. He arrives in the car that built the family fortune. I checked my tie in the rearview mirror. It was the same silk tie I wore the day I signed the deal that took Blackwood Shipping international 30 years ago. I wanted today to be perfect. I had wired $500,000 to the event planner last month. $500,000. That is not just money. That is years of missing birthdays because I was at the office. That is years of ulcers and sleepless nights negotiating with unions and port authorities. I gave it all gladly because Tiffany is my only girl. I pulled up to the heavy iron gates of the Ocean Cliff Resort. The venue is spectacular, sitting right on the edge of the cliffs overlooking the bay. I remember when my company installed the heating systems for this place 20 years ago. I felt a swell of pride. I was not just a guest. I was the host. I was the father of the bride. A young security guard stepped out of the booth. He looked to be about 25, wearing a suit that was too tight and sunglasses that were too big. He did not smile. He held up a hand gloved in black leather, signaling me to stop. I rolled down the window expecting a greeting. I expected him to see the car, to see my tuxedo, and wave me through. Name, he said. He did not say good afternoon. He did not say welcome. Just name. I smiled, trying to keep the mood light. I am the father of the bride's son, Thomas Blackwood. I am a little early, I know, but I wanted to check on the floral arrangements before the guests arrive. The guard did not look at me. He looked down at a digital tablet in his hand. His finger scrolled slowly. Too slowly. The engine of my Bentley purred a low, deep rumble that usually commands respect. But this boy was not impressed. He scrolled up. He scrolled down. Then he shook his head. Name not found, he said. You are not on the guest list, sir. You need to turn around. I actually laughed. It was a short, dry laugh. I thought it was a joke. I thought maybe Tiffany had organized a surprise, or maybe this kid was new. Check again, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I am Thomas Blackwood. I paid for this gate you are standing in front of. I paid for the asphalt we are standing on. And I certainly paid for the 500 guests who are going to be drinking my champagne in an hour. Check. Again. The guard finally looked up. I saw my reflection in his dark sunglasses. I looked old. I looked tired. But I did not look like a liar. He tapped his earpiece. We have a situation at the North Gate, he muttered into the radio. An older male driving a silver antique vehicle. Claims to be the father. He is not on the list. I felt a cold spike in my chest. It was not anger yet. It was confusion. A deep, disorienting confusion. I opened the car door and stepped out. My left knee ached, the old injury from my time in the Navy flaring up as I put weight on it. I stood up to my full height. I am 6 feet 2 inches tall. Even at 70, I know how to occupy space. Look at me, I said, pointing a finger at him. Do not talk to your radio. Talk to me. Call Tiffany. Call the wedding planner. Her name is Jessica. Tell her Tom Blackwood is here. The guard took a step back, his hand resting instinctively on his belt. It was a threat. A subtle one, but I recognized it. Sir, you need to get back in your vehicle, he said, his voice flat and robotic. This is a private event. The host has provided a strict list of approved guests. Your name is not on it. If you do not leave, I will be forced to call the Newport Police Department for trespassing. Trespassing. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. I looked past him through the iron bars of the gate. The winding driveway was lined with hydrangeas, blue and white, my late wife's favorite colors. I had chosen them. And then I saw the cars. A line of vehicles was gliding through the south gate, the VIP entrance. I squinted. My eyes are not what they used to be, but I know corporate fleets when I see them. I saw a black Mercedes Maybach. I knew that license plate. It belonged to the CEO of Horizon Logistics, my biggest competitor. And behind it, a Bentley SUV much newer than mine, with the crest of the Sterling Corporation on the door. Victor Sterling. My blood ran cold. Victor Sterling was the man who tried to bankrupt me in 2008. He was the man who sued me 3 times and lost. Why was Victor Sterling driving into my daughter's wedding while I was being threatened with arrest at the front gate? Something was wrong. Something was terribly, fundamentally wrong. This was not a clerical error. This was not a mistake by a wedding planner. I turned back to the guard. I reached into my jacket pocket. He flinched, thinking I was reaching for a weapon. I pulled out my phone. I am calling my daughter, I said, my hand shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread. Do not bother, the guard said. I paused, my thumb hovering over Tiffany's contact photo. It was a picture of us from her graduation. She was smiling, so bright. What did you say? I asked. The guard took off his sunglasses. For the first time, I saw his eyes. There was no sympathy there, just annoyance. He looked at me like I was a senile old man who had wandered away from a nursing home. I said, "Do not bother calling," he repeated. The bride gave us a specific briefing this morning. She gave us a photo of you. She said that under no circumstances is Mr. Thomas Blackwood allowed on the property. She said you would cause a scene. She said you are mentally unstable. The world stopped. The sound of the ocean faded. The hum of my car engine disappeared. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Mentally unstable. A scene. So I am not just uninvited, I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from someone else. I am banned. The guard nodded. He looked at his watch. You have 30 seconds to turn that heap of scrap metal around, old man, he said, sneering. Or you will spend your daughter's wedding day in a holding cell. I looked at the gate one last time. I looked at the flowers I bought. I looked at the road leading to the resort, where my daughter was currently getting ready, laughing, drinking mimosas, probably toasting to her freedom from her old man. I did not yell. I did not storm the gate. I learned a long time ago in business that when someone shuts a door in your face, you do not knock. You buy the building and evict them. I got back into my Bentley. I slammed the heavy door shut. It made a solid final sound, like a vault closing. I put the car in reverse. Okay, I whispered to the empty car. You want me to go away? I will go away. But I am taking my wallet with me. I spun the steering wheel and drove away from the paradise I had paid for. I drove 5 miles down the coast to a dirty roadside diner with a flickering neon sign. I ordered a black coffee and a burger that tasted like cardboard. I sat there in my tuxedo, surrounded by truckers and tourists, and then I took out my phone. My hand was not shaking anymore. I was calm, the kind of calm that comes before a hurricane. I saw a notification on my screen, a voice message from Tiffany. I pressed play, and as I listened to her voice, the last piece of my heart did not break. It turned to stone. I sat in the idling Bentley watching the winding driveway. The security guard stood with his arms crossed, staring at the bumper of my car like he was waiting for a reason to draw a weapon. My heart was pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I kept telling myself this was a misunderstanding. I kept telling myself that in a moment Tiffany would come running down that hill in her white dress, laughing about a mix-up at the gate. I was ready to forgive her. I was ready to laugh about it. A father is always ready to forgive. Then I saw a golf cart winding down the path. My breath caught in my throat. I opened the heavy door of the car and stepped out onto the asphalt, ignoring the sharp sting in my bad knee. I wanted to be standing when she saw me. I wanted to open my arms. But as the cart got closer, my arms fell to my sides. It was Tiffany, but she was not wearing a wedding dress. She was not wearing the white lace gown we had picked out together in Paris last year, the gown that cost $12,000. Instead, she was wearing a silver cocktail dress that was barely more than a slip. It was short, tight, and aggressive. She did not look like a bride about to walk down the aisle. She looked like a hostess at a high-stakes casino. She looked hard. She hopped out of the cart before it even stopped. She did not run to me. She did not smile. She stopped exactly 2 meters away on the other side of the iron gate. She did not signal the guard to open it. She kept the bars between us. "Dad," she sighed. Her voice was not warm. It was the tone she used when the pool cleaner came late. Impatient, annoyed. "Tiffany," I said, stepping forward. My hand instinctively reached out to touch the cold metal bars. "Honey, what is going on? This guard says I am not on the list. Tell him who I am. Tell him I am your father." She crossed her arms over her chest. I noticed she was holding a glass of champagne. She took a sip before answering. The bubbles caught the afternoon light. "I know who you are, Dad," she said. "And the guard is right. You are not on the list." I blinked. I felt like the ground was shifting under my feet. The ocean breeze suddenly felt freezing cold. "What do you mean I am not on the list?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I paid for the list. I paid for this gate. I paid for that champagne you are drinking. Tiffany, today is your wedding day. I am supposed to walk you down the aisle." She rolled her eyes. It was a gesture so dismissive it felt like a physical slap. She stepped closer to the bars and lowered her voice not out of privacy, but out of embarrassment. "Look at you, Dad," she said, waving her hand at me like she was shooing away a fly. "Just look at you. You drove the Bentley. I told you specifically to rent the Rolls-Royce Phantom. The Bentley looks ancient. It smells like old leather and cigars. It does not fit the vibe." The vibe. I looked at my car, my beautiful, sturdy car that had carried me safely for 30 years. Then I looked down at my tuxedo. It was classic. It was timeless. "And you?" She continued, her eyes scanning me from head to toe with pure judgment. "You look tired, Dad. You look old. Your skin is gray. You have that limp when you walk. Honestly, it is depressing to look at." I stood there stunned. I have negotiated with union leaders who threatened to burn down my warehouses. I have stared down corrupt customs officials in foreign ports. But nothing prepared me for the cruelty of my own child. "Tiffany," I said quietly, "I am 70 years old. I work 18 hours a day. I look tired because I spent the last 3 months securing the trust fund for your future children. She shook her head, cutting me off. That is exactly the point, she snapped. This is not just a wedding, Dad. This is a networking event. Greg has invited serious investors, tech moguls, venture capitalists from Silicon Valley, people who value youth and innovation and vitality. Having you shuffle down the aisle looking like a ghost from the past. It ruins the aesthetic. It makes the Blackwood brand look dying. I felt a lump form in my throat. It was hard and painful. She was talking about me like I was a piece of broken furniture that needed to be moved to the basement before the guests arrived. So I am a prop, I whispered. I am just bad scenery to you. You are being dramatic, she said, checking her diamond-encrusted watch. Look, Dad, we made a decision, Greg and his father and I. We decided it is better if you sit this one out. We told everyone you are resting at a spa in Switzerland. It sounds elegant. It sounds exclusive. If you show up here dragging your leg and driving that relic, you expose the lie. You embarrass us. I looked at her face. I tried to find the little girl who used to sit on my lap and ask me to read her stories about ships and sailors. She was gone. In her place was a woman who calculated love on a spreadsheet. And then I saw it. My eyes drifted to her neck. Resting against her collarbone was a necklace. It was a vintage piece. Sapphires surrounded by white diamonds in a platinum setting. My breath stopped. That necklace, I said, pointing a shaking finger through the bars. Tiffany touched it lightly, her fingers tapping on the stones. Oh, this, she said casually. It matched the dress. Vintage is in right now. That belonged to your mother, I said, my voice cracking. I gave that to her on our 25th anniversary. She died wearing that necklace, Tiffany. We agreed. We agreed you would only wear it on the day you got married, on the moment you said your vows. I am wearing it, she said, shrugging, and I am getting married, so technically I am following the rules. No, I said. You are wearing it to drink champagne and impress investors. You are wearing it as a costume. You are desecrating her memory. She sighed loudly, the sound sharp and irritated. God, you are so emotional, she said. This is exactly why you cannot come in. You would be crying in every photo. You would be making speeches about Mom and the good old days. It is a buzzkill, Dad. Nobody wants that energy. We want a party. We want the future, not the past. She turned to the guard. Make sure he leaves, she said. If he is not gone in 2 minutes, call the police. She did not say goodbye. She did not say, I love you. She turned her back on me. The silver dress shimmered in the sun as she walked back toward the golf cart. I stood there for a moment. My hand was still gripping the cold iron bar. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the gate off its hinges. But then a strange calm washed over me. It was the calm of a man who realizes he has nothing left to lose. I looked at the guard. He was looking at his boots, ashamed to meet my eyes. He had heard everything. Go home, sir, he whispered. She is not worth it. I nodded. He was right. She was not worth the scene. She was not worth the arrest. I turned around and walked back to the Bentley. My knees screamed in protest, but I forced myself to walk straight. I would not limp, not while she might be watching. I opened the car door and slid into the driver's seat. The smell of old leather and cigars greeted me. It smelled like hard work. It smelled like dignity. I started the engine. The V8 roared to life, a deep, powerful sound that shook the frame. I put the car in reverse. As I began to back away, I looked into the rearview mirror one last time. I wanted to erase the image of her from my mind, but I couldn't look away. Tiffany had reached the top of the hill. The golf cart had stopped. A man was walking toward her. He was tall with silver hair and a tan that came from spending too much time on yachts he didn't own. It was Victor Sterling, my nemesis, the man who had tried to destroy my reputation for decades. I watched as Tiffany ran to him. She did not stop 2 meters away. She threw her arms around his neck. She laughed, a genuine laugh. Then I saw her lips move. I am a lip reader. It is a skill you learn when you conduct business in noisy shipyards. She looked at Victor Sterling, the man who hated me, and she said one word. Dad. She called him Dad. She took his arm and he led her toward the party, toward the music, toward the life I had paid for. I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded slightly on the gravel. I sat there staring at the empty driveway in the mirror. The pain in my chest was gone. It was replaced by something else, something cold and hard and sharp. It was the feeling of a contract being breached. They wanted me to be a ghost. They wanted me to be invisible. They wanted my money, but not my face. Okay, I whispered to the reflection in the mirror. You want me to disappear. I will disappear. But first I am going to make sure you see me one last time. I shifted the gear into drive. I did not speed away. I drove slowly, deliberately. I needed to find a place with a strong Wi-Fi signal. I needed to find a place where I could work. Because the wedding was over. The war had just begun. I pulled the Bentley into the cracked asphalt parking lot of a place called Sal's Roadside Diner. It was the kind of establishment where the neon sign buzzed like a dying insect, and the air smelled heavily of burnt grease and diesel fumes. It was 5 miles and a whole universe away from the oceanfront resort where my daughter was currently celebrating. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment in the silence. The leather seats of my car felt like the only hug I was going to get today. I stepped out and the wind hit me. It was not the fresh sea breeze of Newport anymore. It was the dusty grit of the highway. I walked into the diner, and the bell above the door chimed aggressively announcing my arrival. The place was mostly empty. A couple of truck drivers hunched over their plates, and a waitress with tired eyes and a stained apron looked up at me. She paused. I could see the confusion in her face. It is not every day you see a 70-year-old man walk into a roadside dive bar wearing a $5,000 bespoke tuxedo. I felt ridiculous. I felt like a clown who had been fired from the circus. I slid into a booth at the back. The red vinyl seat was torn and repaired with silver duct tape. It made a sticky sound as I sat down. I placed my hands on the table. The surface was sticky too. The waitress walked over and dropped a laminated menu in front of me. She did not ask why I was dressed like a diplomat. She just asked what I wanted. Black coffee, I said, and a burger. She nodded and walked away. I looked out the window at my car parked alone under the flickering streetlight. It looked out of place just like me. I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the duct tape. The image of Tiffany standing behind those iron bars burned in my mind. The way she looked at me, the way she spoke to me. It was not anger I saw in her eyes. It was pity. And that hurt worse than hatred. The waitress returned and slammed a white mug and a plate onto the table. The coffee was scalding hot, and the burger looked gray and lifeless, sitting next to a pile of cold fries. I picked up the burger, but my appetite was gone. I just held it staring at the sesame seeds on the bun, wondering where I went wrong. I gave her everything. Private schools, ponies, cars. I sent her to business school in London. I never missed a tuition payment. I never said no. Maybe that was my sin. Maybe I loved her too much and taught her too little. Then my phone vibrated against the Formica table. The sound was loud in the quiet diner. It buzzed against the wood like a warning. I looked at the screen. It was a photo of Tiffany. My heart jumped. For a split second, I thought she was calling to apologize. I thought she was calling to say it was all a big mistake and I should come back. I reached out and tapped the screen. It was not a call. It was a voice note, a recorded message. I pressed play. I held the phone up to my ear, trying to block out the country music playing softly from the kitchen radio. Tiffany's voice filled my ear. It was soft. It was breathless. It was the voice she used when she wanted something when she was a little girl. "Dad," she said, "I am sending this because I cannot talk right now. The guests are arriving and it is crazy here. Look, I know you are hurt. I know you think I am being cruel. But please understand that I am doing this for you." She paused in the recording. I could hear the sound of wind and distant music in the background. "I spoke to Dr. Aris this morning," she continued. "He is worried about you, Dad. We all are. He said that your episodes are getting worse. The memory loss, the confusion, you forget names. You get angry for no reason. Those are the early signs of dementia, Dad. I did not want to say it to your face because I knew you would deny it. But we could not risk you having an episode in front of the investors. Imagine if you forgot who Victor Sterling was. Imagine if you started yelling at the wrong people. I am protecting your dignity, Dad. I am saving you from yourself. I love you too much to let you embarrass yourself. Go home. Rest. We will visit you tomorrow." The message ended. The silence returned. I sat there frozen. The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the table. Dementia. The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I looked at my hands. They were trembling. Was it rage or was it the disease? I tried to remember the last few weeks. Did I forget names? I forgot where I put my reading glasses last Tuesday. I forgot to call my dentist to reschedule an appointment. Is that how it starts? Is that the slipping away? I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was the one who was wrong. Maybe I did have an episode, and I just do not remember it. Maybe I am the villain in this story, a confused old man ruining his daughter's happiness because his brain is rotting away. I reached for the coffee mug to steady my nerves. My hand shook violently. I knocked the mug over. The hot black liquid splashed across the table, dripping onto my tuxedo pants. It burned my skin, but I barely felt it. I felt small. I felt broken. The waitress looked over from the counter, but she did not come to help. She just shook her head. I grabbed a napkin and started dabbing at the stain on my trousers. "I am losing my mind," I whispered to myself. "My own daughter says I am losing my mind. And she loves me. She would not lie about something like that. She is protecting me." I felt tears pricking the corners of my eyes. I was ready to give up. I was ready to get back in the car, drive home, and wait for the darkness to take my memories. And then the phone buzzed again. It was not a message this time. It was a notification. A sharp ping that cut through my self-pity. I looked at the screen. It was an alert from my private banking app. I had given Tiffany a supplementary card for wedding emergencies. Ping, $5,000. The payment was to a company called Vintage Vines, expensive wine. She was buying bottles that cost more than this entire diner. Ping, $10,000. The payment was to the Newport Orchestra. I stared at the screen. If she was so worried about my health, why was she spending money so fast? Why was she partying while her father was supposedly losing his mind? Ping. Another alert. This one made me stop breathing. $50,000. I squinted at the screen, wiping a smear of coffee from the glass. $50,000. That is a lot of money. That is a down payment on a house. That is a year of salary for a lot of people. I read the merchant name, Dr. Aris Medical Consultancy, Urgent Service. I frowned. Dr. Aris, the name she mentioned in the voicemail, the doctor who said I had dementia. I sat up straighter. The trembling in my hands stopped. My brain, the brain that was supposedly failing me, kicked into gear. I have been a businessman for 40 years. I know how invoices work. I know how medical billing works. You do not pay a doctor $50,000 for a consultation. You do not pay a doctor $50,000 on a Saturday afternoon during a wedding. And you certainly do not label it urgent service unless someone is dying on the operating table. But nobody was dying. They were drinking champagne. A cold realization washed over me, hotter than the coffee I had just spilled. You pay a doctor $50,000 for a signature. You pay a doctor $50,000 to write a report that says what you want it to say. I scrolled back to the voicemail. I listened to it again. This time I did not hear a concerned daughter. I heard a script. I heard a performance. She needed me to be sick. Why? Why did she need a medical record stating I had dementia today of all days? I unlocked my phone and opened the banking app. I looked at the timestamp. The payment to Dr. Aris was made 10 minutes ago, right after she sent me away. This was not a diagnosis. This was a transaction. I looked at the cold burger. I looked at the dirty diner. And then I looked at my reflection in the dark window. I did not see a senile old man. I saw a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. She thinks I am forgetting things. Well, I was about to remind her of something very important. I am Thomas Blackwood, and I never pay for a service I did not authorize. I picked up the phone. I did not call Tiffany. I dialed a number I had not called in years. Sarah, I said, when the voice on the other end answered. Wake up. I need you to open your laptop. We are going hunting. I stayed on the line waiting for Sarah to pick up, but while the phone rang, I did not sit idle. My thumb hovered over the name on the banking transaction. Dr. Jonathan Aris. The name sounded efficient. It sounded professional. It sounded like the kind of name you trust with your life. But $50,000 for a single visit does not buy trust. It buys silence, or it buys a lie. I minimized the call screen and opened the browser on my phone. The connection in the diner was slow, and every second the loading circle spun, I felt my blood pressure rising. Finally, the search results populated. The first result was a polished website. Aris Concierge Medicine. Discreet care for elite families. The photos showed a silver-haired man in a white coat smiling benevolently at an elderly couple. It looked perfect. Too perfect. I scrolled down past the sponsored ads. I wanted the truth, not the marketing. I found it on page 2. It was a forum for legal professionals discussing probate law and guardianship disputes. There was a thread titled Excessive Billing and Questionable Diagnoses in Competency Hearings. I clicked it. The text was dense, full of legal jargon, but one name kept appearing in the comments. Dr. Aris. One comment stood out. It was from a lawyer in Boston. He wrote that Aris is the go-to guy if you need to expedite a guardianship. If you have a stubborn parent who refuses to hand over the checkbook, Aris will find a medical reason to take it from them. He specializes in early-onset dementia diagnoses that are legally binding, but medically vague. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I read another comment. This one was from a woman who claimed Aris had declared her father incompetent 2 days before he changed his will. By the time they contested it, the assets were gone. I put the phone down on the sticky table. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was not from fear. It was from rage. A cold, calculating rage that cleared the fog in my head instantly. This was not about my health. This was a coup. I closed my eyes and let my mind travel back to last week. Tuesday. Tiffany had come to the penthouse. She brought bagels and coffee. She was wearing a yellow sundress, and she looked like sunshine. She told me she was worried about my blood pressure. She said she had found a private specialist who could do a comprehensive workup. Just to be safe, Dad, she had said. For the wedding. I want you to be in top form to walk me down the aisle. I remembered how touched I was. I remembered thinking how lucky I was to have a daughter who cared so much. I agreed. I got in her car. She drove me to a clinic in a quiet part of town. No signage. Just a heavy oak door and thick carpets. The doctor was there. Dr. Eris. I recognized his face now from the website. He was charming. He asked me questions. Simple questions. What is the date? Who is the president? Can you count backwards from 100 by sevens? I answered them all. I thought it was a cognitive baseline test, standard procedure for men my age. Then came the paperwork. Tiffany stood by my side holding the pen. It is just standard liability waivers, Dad, she said. And some insurance forms. You know how they are. Sign here, and initial here. I signed. I did not read the fine print. I signed because she was my daughter. I signed because I trusted her with my life. I signed because I was a fool. I opened my eyes and looked at the diner ceiling. I realized now what I had signed. It wasn't insurance forms. It was a release of information, and likely a dormant power of attorney clause that only needed a medical trigger to activate. The pieces of the puzzle slammed into place with the force of a freight train. The wedding was the stage. The guests were the witnesses. My absence was the evidence. If I am not at the wedding, it looks suspicious. If Tiffany plays a recording or shows a letter from Dr. Eris saying I am having an episode, it looks tragic. The board of directors is there. The investors are there. They see a weeping daughter. They hear a medical diagnosis from a reputable doctor. They see the empty chair. And just like that, Thomas Blackwood is no longer the CEO. Thomas Blackwood is a liability. I grabbed my phone again and pulled up the corporate bylaws of Blackwood Shipping. I wrote them 30 years ago. I knew them by heart, but I needed to see the words. I needed to see the trap I had built for myself. Article 25. Incapacitation of the chairman. I read the text, whispering the words in the empty booth. In the event that the chairman is deemed medically unfit to discharge his duties by a licensed physician and is absent from 2 consecutive mandatory shareholder meetings, his voting rights shall immediately transfer to his designated proxy until such time as competency is restored. My designated proxy. I laughed. It was a harsh barking sound that made the truck driver at the counter turn around. My proxy was Tiffany. I had set it up that way years ago when her mother died. I wanted to ensure that if anything happened to me, the company would stay in the family. I thought I was protecting her inheritance. I did not realize I was handing her a loaded gun. She did not just want to marry Greg. She wanted to merge the company with his father's empire. I had always blocked that merger. Victor Sterling is a vulture. He strips companies for parts. I would never let him touch my ships. I would never let him fire my crews. But if I am incompetent, I cannot vote no. Tiffany becomes me. And Tiffany will sign whatever Victor puts in front of her as long as she gets her cut and her social status. That is why I was banned. That is why the guard was briefed. They needed me to be gone. They needed me to be angry and confused. If I had stormed the gate, if I had shouted and screamed, the police would have come. It would have been a public record of my instability. It would have been the final nail in my coffin. By walking away, I had ruined their perfect scene. But the clock was still ticking. The ceremony was starting in less than an hour. The merger documents would be signed at the reception. They would announce my retirement and the acquisition in the same breath. I looked at the transaction on my screen again. $50,000. The price of a man's life. The price of a father's legacy. I felt a vibration in my hand. Sarah had picked up the phone. "Tom," she said, her voice thick with sleep. "It is Saturday." "Why are you calling me?" "Sarah, I said, my voice steady and cold. I need you to wake up. I need you to get to your computer. What is wrong? She asked, sensing the tone in my voice. Is it the wedding? There is no wedding, Sarah, I said. It is a hostile takeover. They are using a fake medical diagnosis to trigger Article 25. They are going to sell the company to Sterling tonight. I heard the rustling of sheets on the other end. Sarah was moving. She was the best executive assistant I ever had. She knew where the bodies were buried because she helped me dig the holes. What do you need? She asked. I need you to access the medical database, I said. I know you still have the admin codes for the company insurance portal. I need you to find out exactly what Dr. Aris uploaded today. And Sarah, I need you to find the poison pill. The poison pill, she repeated. Tom, you haven't used that protocol in 20 years. I know, I said. But today is a special occasion. Today I am not just a father. I am the chairman, and I am about to fire my daughter. I hung up the phone. I looked down at the coffee stain on my trousers. It didn't matter anymore. I wasn't going to a party. I was going to war. I paid for the coffee with a $20 bill and told the waitress to keep the change. I walked out into the parking lot. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pavement. I looked at my Bentley. It was a tank. It was a fortress. I got in and started the engine. The powerful vibration felt different this time. It didn't feel like a leisurely drive. It felt like a weapon powering up. I had the evidence of the bribe. I had the knowledge of the bylaws. And in a few minutes, Sarah would give me the smoking gun. Tiffany thought I was fragile. She thought I was a confused old man who would go home and cry. She forgot who raised her. She forgot that before I was a father, I was a sailor. And sailors know how to survive the storm. I put the car in gear. I wasn't going home. I was going to find a high-speed internet connection. And then I was going to crash the wedding. Not with my body, but with the truth. I sat in the driver's seat of the Bentley, with the iPad propped up against the steering wheel. The leather was cool under my fingers, but my palms were sweating. Outside the windows, the world was getting darker as the sun dipped below the horizon, but inside the car, the blue glow of the screen illuminated my face like a ghost. I had dialed Sarah. She picked up on the second ring. Sarah is 65 years old. She retired 3 years ago with a pension I made sure was fat enough to buy her a villa in Florida. She was my executive assistant for 30 years. She knows my social security number better than I do. She knows my passwords. She knows my secrets. And most importantly, she knows loyalty. A word my daughter seems to have erased from her vocabulary. Thomas, she said. Her voice was crisp and alert. Sarah never sounded sleepy even if I woke her up at midnight. Why are you calling me on the private line? Is everything all right with the wedding? There is no wedding, Sarah, I said. My voice was low and steady. It was the voice I used when I fired the entire management team in '98. I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it fast. I heard the sound of a chair scraping against the floor on her end. She was already moving toward her computer. I am listening, she said. I need access to the Ocean Cliff security grid, I said. Do you remember the admin backdoor we installed when we upgraded their logistics server 10 years ago? The one I told you to keep active just in case the new owners tried to screw us on the contract. I remember, she said. I can hear her typing. The rapid-fire click of mechanical keys. I never deleted the root access, Thomas. I figured you might need to check on your investment one day. I just didn't think it would be today. Get me in, I said. I need to see the ballroom. I need to see what is happening inside that building while I am sitting out here in the dirt. Give me 30 seconds, she said. I stared at the black screen of my iPad. A loading circle spun in the center. It was a hypnotic white loop. I tried to control my breathing. In, out. I needed to be calm. I needed to be sharp. If my suspicions were right, if this was really a hostile takeover disguised as a marriage, then I needed proof. Hard, irrefutable proof. I thought about the guests I had seen entering the gate. Victor Sterling, the board members, the bankers. None of them were friends of Tiffany. They were sharks, and sharks do not gather for love. They gather for a feeding frenzy. I am bypassing the firewall now, Sarah said. Her voice was tight with concentration. They updated the front-end software, but the kernel is still ours. Amateur mistake. Okay, Thomas. I am patching the feed through to your device. You should see it now. The screen on my iPad flickered. The white circle disappeared. A burst of static noise hissed through the speakers, and then the image stabilized. It was a high-angle shot from the camera hidden in the chandelier of the grand ballroom. The resolution was crystal clear. 4K video streaming directly to my lap. I leaned in, squinting at the display. My brain tried to process what I was seeing. I expected to see a wedding. I expected to see round tables covered in white linen. I expected to see centerpieces made of hydrangeas and roses. I expected to see a dance floor. I expected to see a cake. But there was no cake. There were no flowers. There was no dance floor. What the hell is this? I whispered. The room was set up like a conference hall. The round tables were gone. Instead, there were rows of chairs facing a raised stage. The lighting was not soft and romantic. It was bright, harsh, and clinical. It was the kind of lighting you use for a shareholders' meeting. On the stage where the altar should have been, there was a massive projection screen. It was 20 feet wide, and on that screen, there was no picture of the happy couple. There was no just married sign. There was a logo. It was a logo I knew well. It was the blue anchor of Blackwood Shipping. My company. My life's work. But it was not alone. Next to it, intertwined like a snake strangling its prey, was the red shield of the Sterling Corporation. And underneath, in bold black letters that looked like a tombstone engraving, were the words, Merger Ceremony, Blackwood and Sterling. I felt the air leave my lungs. It felt like someone had punched me in the solar plexus. I sat there in the silence of the car, staring at the words that spelled my doom. Merger ceremony. It was not a wedding. It was a funeral. It was the funeral of my legacy. Sarah, I said. My voice sounded hollow. Sarah, are you seeing this? I am seeing it, Tom, she whispered. Her voice trembled with rage. Oh my God! They are not just selling the company. They are dissolving it. Look at the charts on the side screens. I swiped the screen to switch to camera 2. This camera was positioned near the podium. It showed the presentation slides that were queued up. I zoomed in. The text was small but legible. Asset liquidation plan. Phase 1. Sell off the Atlantic fleet. Phase 2. Rebrand to Sterling Global. Phase 3. Executive retirement package for Thomas Blackwood. Retirement. That was a polite word for forced exile. I swiped again to camera 3. This one showed the crowd. I saw them. My board of directors. Men and women I had made rich. Men and women I had invited to my home for Christmas dinners. They were sitting there holding glasses of champagne, laughing. They were not waiting for a bride. They were waiting for a payday. And there in the front row sat Tiffany. She was not looking nervous like a bride should. She was looking at her phone. She was smiling. She was texting them. Beside her sat Greg the groom. He was leaning over, whispering something in her ear and pointing at the screen. He was pointing at the liquidation numbers. They were calculating their cut. They tricked me, I said. The realization was cold and sharp like a knife in the back. The wedding is a sham. The marriage is a sham. Greg doesn't want a wife. He wants a seat on the board. And Tiffany. My God, Tiffany isn't getting married. She is getting paid, Thomas Sarah said sharply. Look at the podium. Look who is walking up to the microphone. I switched back to camera 1. Victor Sterling was walking onto the stage. He was wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my first house. He walked with the arrogance of a man who has already won the war. He tapped the microphone. I turned up the volume on my iPad. The sound was tinny but clear. Ladies and gentlemen, Victor said, booming through the speakers. Thank you for gathering here today on such short notice. We all know this was billed as a wedding. And in a way it is. It is the marriage of two great titans of industry. The crowd chuckled. A polite, greedy chuckle. Sadly, Victor continued putting on a mask of fake concern. Our dear friend Thomas Blackwood could not be here today. As many of you know, his health has been declining rapidly. His mental state has become fragile. I gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. Liar, I hissed at the screen. You lying snake. Victor shook his head theatrically. It breaks my heart to say this, but Thomas is no longer capable of leading Blackwood Shipping. He is confused. He is erratic. Just today he tried to crash this event screaming about conspiracies that don't exist. For his own good, and for the good of the shareholders, his daughter Tiffany has agreed to step in as his legal guardian and proxy. The camera panned to Tiffany. She stood up. She looked sad. She looked brave. She wiped a fake tear from her eye and waved to the crowd. The applause was thunderous. They were applauding my destruction. They were clapping for my death while I was still alive. Sarah, I said. My voice was no longer hollow. It was cold. It was the temperature of the deep ocean. I am here, Tom, Sarah said. How much time do we have before they sign the papers? I can see the agenda on the teleprompter, Sarah said. Victor speaks for 10 minutes. Then Tiffany speaks. Then the signing. You have maybe 15 minutes, Tom. 15 minutes. 15 minutes to save 40 years of work. 15 minutes to stop them from erasing my name from the history books. I looked at the screen one last time. I looked at Tiffany's face. She looked so beautiful and so rotten. She thought she had won. She thought the old man was crying in a diner somewhere, eating a cold burger and forgetting his own name. She forgot one thing. She forgot that I built this company. She forgot that I wrote the code. And she forgot that I still have the keys. Sarah, I said, do not log off. I am not going anywhere, Sarah said. What are you going to do? I am going to attend the wedding, I said. But you are 5 miles away, Sarah said. You cannot make it in time. The gates are locked. The police are on speed dial. I don't need to be there physically, I said. I have the iPad. I have the admin access. And I have you. I closed the video feed and opened the control panel for the resort's audio-visual system. The interface was old but familiar. It controlled everything. The lights, the sound, the projector, the microphone. They want a show, I said. I am going to give them a show. Sarah. I want you to find the file we talked about. The one with the financial records from the private account. The one titled Wedding Expenses. I have it, Sarah said. Good, I said. Get it ready to upload. But first I need to make a phone call. Who are you calling? Sarah asked. I am calling the bank, I said. It is time to freeze hell over. I looked at the resort on the horizon. I could see the faint glow of the lights against the night sky. They were celebrating in there. They were drinking my wine and dividing my empire. Enjoy the champagne, Victor, I whispered, because it is the last thing you are going to taste before I burn your house down. I tapped the banking app. It was time to execute the ghost protocol. It was time to show them that ghosts can still bite. I kept the Bentley parked in the shadows of the diner lot, but my mind was 5 miles away inside the ballroom of the Ocean Cliff Resort. The iPad screen was my only window into the betrayal unfolding in real time. I swiped across the glass to adjust the camera angle again. The lens zoomed in past the rows of clapping shareholders, past the floral arrangements that I had paid for, but would never see, and focused on the podium. There they were. The triumvirate of my destruction. Victor Sterling, Greg, and Tiffany. They looked like royalty standing there under the spotlights. Victor had his arm around Greg's shoulder, the proud father beaming at his son. But it wasn't the pride of a parent watching a child get married. It was the pride of a general watching his lieutenant capture an enemy fort. I tapped the audio icon on the screen, pushing the volume slider to the maximum. The directional microphone on the podium was sensitive. It was designed to pick up speeches, but right now it was picking up the whispers of conspirators who thought no one was listening. The applause from the crowd died down as Victor leaned in close to Greg. I held my breath. "You did good, son," Victor said. His voice was low, a gravelly rumble that came through the iPad speakers clearly. The old man took the bait. "He is gone." Greg laughed. It was a nervous, shallow sound. "Are you sure he won't come back, Dad? You know Thomas. He is stubborn. He is not coming back." Victor sneered. "The security team has strict orders. If he shows his face, he gets arrested. And once Dr. Aris files that report tomorrow morning, Thomas Blackwood will be a ward of the state. He will be in a facility by lunchtime. Locked up. Medicated. Out of the way." I felt a cold hand grip my heart. A facility. They weren't just planning to steal my company. They were planning to steal my freedom. They were going to lock me away in some high-end nursing home, doping me up with sedatives until I drooled on myself so they could spend my money in peace. Greg nodded, adjusting his silk tie. "And the signing. We are still on schedule." 1 hour, Victor said, checking his watch. "In exactly 1 hour, when the reception starts, Tiffany signs the merger agreement as Thomas's proxy. Once that ink is dry, Blackwood Shipping ceases to exist. It becomes a subsidiary of Sterling Corp. And the best part is we get his entire Atlantic fleet for pennies on the dollar." I watched Greg's face. He didn't look conflicted. He didn't look guilty. He looked hungry. "That fleet is worth $2 billion, Greg whispered. "And it will be ours," Victor said, clapping him on the back. "All because you managed to charm the princess." I shifted my gaze to Tiffany. She was standing a few feet away, pretending to adjust her microphone, but she was listening. She walked over to them, her silver dress shimmering like the scales of a fish. "I heard what you said," she said. Her voice was sharp. There was no sweetness in it now. "No, Daddy, I love you. Just business." "Don't worry, sweetheart," Victor said, smiling at her with the warmth of a reptile. "You did your part perfectly." The tearful daughter act was Oscar-worthy. Tiffany smirked. It was a look I had never seen on her face before. It was cruel. It was calculating. "I don't care about Oscars, Victor," she said. "I care about the contract. You said 30%. "Of course," Victor said, spreading his hands. 30% of the acquisition value, plus a seat on the new board." "And the penthouse," Tiffany added. "I want Dad's penthouse in Manhattan. He won't need it where he is going." I flinched. The penthouse. The home where I raised her. The home where her mother died. She wanted to take that too. She wanted to strip me of everything. My company, my freedom, my home. Victor laughed. "Consider it a wedding gift. Once you sign those papers, you can have whatever you want." Tiffany smiled. A genuine predatory smile. "Good. Because dealing with him these last few months has been exhausting. Listening to his war stories. Pretending to care about his ships. I earned every penny of that 30%. I sat back in the car seat. The iPad slipped from my hands onto my lap. I stared out the windshield at the dark highway. A single tear rolled down my cheek. It was hot and angry. I had spent my life building a fortress to protect her. I had fought off competitors. I had survived recessions. I had worked until my hands bled so she would never have to know what struggle felt like. And all that time I thought I was raising a daughter, but I was raising a monster. She was not a victim. She was not being manipulated by the Sterlings. She was one of them. She was a partner in the crime. She had looked me in the eye this morning and kissed my cheek, knowing that by sunset she would be signing my life away. I am not her father anymore, I whispered to the empty car. To her, I am just an asset, a resource to be mined and discarded. I looked back at the screen. They were shaking hands now. Victor, Greg, Tiffany. An unholy alliance sealed with champagne and lies. They thought I was finished. They thought I was a senile old man crying in his soup. They thought the game was over. But they forgot the first rule of the shipping business. You never celebrate until the cargo is in the port. And I was the captain of this ship. I picked up the iPad again. My hands were steady now. The sadness was gone. It had been burned away by the fire of betrayal. Sarah, I said into the phone, are you still there? I am here, Tom, she said. I heard everything. I am so sorry, Tom. She is evil. Save the sympathy, Sarah, I said. We have work to do. They want to sign a contract in 1 hour. That gives us 59 minutes to change the terms of the deal. What are you going to do? Sarah asked. I am going to trigger the poison pill, I said, and then I am going to introduce them to the real Thomas Blackwood. Not the father, not the old man, but the CEO. I opened the banking app again. I opened the network control panel. I opened the file Sarah had sent me. They called me a prey. They called me a victim. I swiped the screen, activating the command line interface for the resort's main server. Let's see how they like it when the prey bites back. I disconnected from the server for a brief second to switch apps on my phone. My hands were moving with a precision that surprised me. The tremors were gone. The heartbreak was gone. In their place was the cold, mechanical efficiency of a man who had spent 40 years navigating the shark-infested waters of international trade. I dialed the number for Arthur Miller. Miller is not a warm man. He does not ask about your grandchildren. He does not send holiday cards. He is the most expensive corporate litigator in New York City, and I pay him a retainer of $20,000 a month just to answer my calls on the first ring. He is my attack dog, and tonight I needed him to bite. He answered on the second ring. The background noise on his end was the clatter of silverware and the hum of a crowded restaurant. He was out to dinner, probably spending my money on a steak he wouldn't finish. Thomas, he said. His voice was guarded. He knew I never called on Saturday nights unless a ship had sunk or a government had fallen. Miller, I said, cutting through the pleasantries. I need you to step outside. Somewhere quiet. Now. There was a pause. I heard the scrape of a chair and the sound of footsteps. A door opened and closed and the background noise vanished, replaced by the hush of a city street. I am listening, Thomas Miller said. You sound different. What happened? They are invoking Article 25, I said. Silence. The silence stretched for 5 seconds, but I knew exactly what Miller was doing. He was running the bylaws of Blackwood Shipping through his mind. He wrote them, after all. He knew exactly what Article 25 meant. Article 25, Miller repeated, his voice dropping to a whisper. The incapacitation clause. Thomas, are you in a hospital? Have you had a stroke? I am sitting in a diner parking lot eating a cold burger, I said. But according to my daughter and a corrupt doctor named Eris, I am currently suffering from severe dementia, and I am unfit to lead. They are holding a merger ceremony at the Ocean Cliff Resort right now. Tiffany is about to sign the company over to Victor Sterling as my proxy. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Miller is a cynic, but even he has limits. That is fraud, Thomas, he said. That is a conspiracy. But if they have a medical professional willing to testify, and you are not there to contest it, they might get the signature on paper. We can fight it in court on Monday, but by then the damage to the stock price will be catastrophic. The market hates instability. I do not care about Monday, I snapped. I care about the next 45 minutes. I need you to activate the poison pill. The poison pill. We had drafted this clause 15 years ago, right after Tiffany's mother passed away. I was afraid of remarrying a gold digger or falling ill and losing control, so we created a fail-safe, a clause so toxic that it would make the company indigestible to any hostile takeover. You mean the founder's veto? Miller asked. Yes, I said. The clause that states that any transfer of majority control requires the physical biometric signature of the founder regardless of proxy status if the company is solvent. It is a strong clause, Miller said, hesitating. But Thomas, they have a doctor saying you are mentally incompetent. They will argue that the veto is void because you do not understand what you are signing. They will tie us up in litigation for years while they strip the assets. Then we need a nuclear option, I said. I want you to draft a new document, Miller. Right now. Open your laptop on top of a trash can if you have to. I don't care. What kind of document? Miller asked. A revocation of power of attorney, I said. And a termination of employment. Termination of who? Tiffany Blackwood, I said. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. I want you to draft an immediate dismissal for Tiffany Blackwood from her position as Vice President of Operations. Cause for termination is gross misconduct, corporate espionage, and fraud. And Miller, I want you to draft an amendment to my will. Thomas Miller warned. You are emotional. Do not touch the will tonight. Do it, I roared. My voice filled the small cabin of the Bentley. I want her out, Miller. I want her disinherited. Not a penny, not a share, not a single piece of furniture. She wants to sell my legacy. She can do it from the street. I want the trust fund dissolved. I want the real estate transferred to the charitable foundation. I want it all gone. Okay, Miller said, his voice professional again. I can draft it. I can file the emergency injunction electronically with the court. It will put a temporary stay on any signatures. How long? I asked. I need 20 minutes to draft, Miller said. Then I need to get a process server to the resort to physically serve Tiffany with the cease and desist order. The law requires physical notification for a termination of this magnitude, especially if she is acting as proxy. How long to get the papers to the resort? I asked. Miller paused, calculating. I am in the city. My courier service is fast. But it is Saturday night. Traffic is heavy. Maybe 45 minutes. An hour tops. I looked at the clock on the dashboard. It was 7:15. The signing ceremony was scheduled for 8 o'clock. 45 minutes is too long, I said. My heart hammered against my ribs. By the time your courier gets past the gate, Tiffany will have already signed the merger. Once her signature is on that paper, Sterling owns the fleet. We can sue them later, but the company will be gone. The ships will be rebranded. My crews will be fired. I cannot wait an hour. It is the best I can do, Thomas Miller said. The law moves slowly. The law is useless, I spat. I hung up the phone. I threw it onto the passenger seat. I stared out at the darkness. Miller was right. The law was a shield, but shields are heavy and slow. I didn't need a shield. I needed a sword, and I needed to swing it now. I looked back at the iPad. On the screen, Tiffany was laughing with the guests. She looked so confident, so secure. She thought she was protected by the walls of the resort and the lies of her doctor. She thought she had timed everything perfectly. She had accounted for the police. She had accounted for the board. She had accounted for my medical records. But she had forgotten the one thing that truly rules the world. Money. The law takes an hour to travel 5 miles. Money travels the globe in a millisecond. If I couldn't stop her legal authority in time, maybe I could stop the mechanism that made her powerful. She was only valuable to Victor Sterling because she held the keys to the kingdom. But what happens if the kingdom runs out of gold? What happens if the credit cards stop working? What happens if the lights go out? What happens if the massive transfer of funds required to finalize the merger gets flagged? I picked up the phone again. I didn't call a lawyer this time. I opened my banking app. The interface was blue and calm. It showed my balance. It showed the power I had accumulated over a lifetime. Tiffany was spending my money to host this party. She was using my supplementary black card to pay for the champagne, the flowers, the security guards who kicked me out. I tapped on the card settings. The law is too slow, I whispered to myself. But poverty. Poverty is instant. I stared at the button that said, "Report lost or stolen." If I pressed it, everything would freeze. The resort would not get paid. The transaction for the merger fee would bounce. The dowry payment to the Sterling family would vanish. But it wasn't enough just to freeze the card. I needed to freeze the network. I needed to trigger a fraud alert so massive that every financial institution connected to my name would lock down. I needed to initiate the doomsday protocol. I took a deep breath. I thought about the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. I thought about the woman who just sold me out for a penthouse. "Goodbye, Tiffany," I said. I pressed the button, and then I dialed the number for the bank's fraud department. I was not going to wait for the courier. I was going to send a message that would arrive at the speed of light. I held the phone to my ear. The ringtone was not a standard electronic trill. It was a soft orchestral chime designed to soothe the nerves of billionaires who were calling to move mountains of cash. I was calling the Centurion concierge at American Express. This is not the customer service line where you wait on hold for 20 minutes listening to bad jazz. This is the line where they answer before the second ring, and they know your name before you speak. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwood." The voice on the other end was smooth, polished, and professional. It was a man named David. I had never met David, but he had arranged my flights to Dubai and bought my anniversary gifts for 20 years. He was efficient, and right now I needed him to be ruthless. "David," I said, my voice low and controlled. "I need to authenticate." Voice ID Delta 9. There was a microsecond of silence as the system analyzed the biometric signature of my voice. It checked the pitch, the cadence, and the stress levels. It confirmed that I was indeed Thomas Blackwood, the man who signed the checks. "Authentication confirmed, Mr. Blackwood," David said. His tone shifted slightly, becoming more serious. "How may I assist you tonight? Are you calling about the large transactions currently pending in Rhode Island?" He was good. The system had already flagged the heavy spending. "Yes, David," I said. "I am calling about the wedding expenses. I am calling about the catering, the venue rental, the security team, the flowers." "I understand," David said. "We authorized a temporary lift on your daily limit to accommodate the event. Is there an issue with the vendors?" "There is a major issue," I said. I paused, looking at the iPad screen. On the video feed, I could see Greg raising a glass of vintage champagne. He was laughing at something Victor said. They were celebrating my demise with my money. "The issue, David, is that those charges are fraudulent." "Fraudulent," David repeated. The word hung in the air. "For a bank like this, fraud is not just a crime, it is an insult." "Yes," I said. "I did not authorize these transactions. My supplementary card was misappropriated. The person using it does not have my permission to spend a single dime. I want you to mark every pending transaction from the Ocean Cliff Resort as theft." "I see," David said. I could hear the rapid clicking of a keyboard. He was not asking questions. He was executing orders. "Mr. Blackwood, if I flag these charges as fraud, the system will immediately decline them. It will send a code red to the merchant's point-of-sale terminal. It will instruct them to confiscate the card and contact law enforcement. This will cause significant disruption to the event." "Disruption is the point, David," I said. I watched the screen. A waiter was moving toward Greg's table with a magnum of wine. It was a bottle of Chateau Margaux. $5,000 a pop. "Do it," I said. "Kill the card." "Consider it done," David said. "The account ending in 4099 is now frozen. All pending authorizations totaling $480,000 have been revoked. We are transmitting the decline codes now." "Is there anything else, Mr. Blackwood?" "No, David. That will be all." I hung up the phone. I sat back in the Bentley and watched the iPad. The delay between the digital world and the physical world is usually invisible, but tonight I saw it happen in slow motion. On the screen, the party was still in full swing. The music was playing. The guests were smiling. Tiffany was holding court near the stage, showing off her ring. She had no idea that the invisible financial floor she was standing on had just vanished. Then I saw him, the resort manager, a man in a tailored suit with a headset. He was standing near the entrance to the kitchen. He suddenly stopped. He pressed his hand to his earpiece. I saw his face go pale. He looked down at a tablet in his hand. He swiped the screen frantically. He shook his head. He looked up and scanned the room. His eyes locked on the head table. He locked on Greg. "Here we go," I whispered. The manager didn't walk. He marched. There was a stiffness in his shoulders that screamed panic. In the hospitality business, you never disturb the guests unless the building is on fire or the check has bounced. And for a manager trying to run a $500,000 event, a declined credit card is worse than a fire. I watched as he approached the table. He didn't go to Victor. He went to Greg. He leaned down. I couldn't hear what he was saying because the microphone was on the podium and they were at the table, but I could read the body language perfectly. The manager whispered something in Greg's ear. Greg's smile didn't just fade. It evaporated. He pulled back, looking offended. He shook his head and pointed at Tiffany. He was probably saying something like, "Do you know who we are? Do you know who her father is?" The manager didn't back down. He held up the tablet. He showed Greg the screen. Greg's face turned a shade of red that matched the lobster on his plate. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the black card. My black card. The one Tiffany had given him to hold. He handed it to the manager with a dismissive wave, telling him to run it again. I laughed. It was a cold, dark laugh. "Go ahead, Greg. Run it till the magnetic strip melts. It is just a piece of plastic now." The manager took the card. He signaled to a waiter who was holding a portable credit card machine. He inserted the chip. I leaned closer to the iPad. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. The waiter looked at the machine. He frowned. He looked at the manager. He showed him the readout. Declined. Pick up card. Call bank. The manager nodded. He did not give the card back to Greg. He slipped it into his own pocket. Greg stood up. He slammed his hand on the table. The cutlery rattled. He was shouting now. I could hear faint shouts through the ambient microphones. "What do you mean, declined?" he yelled. "That is a black card. It has no limit." The manager took a step back, but he signaled with his hand. And this was the moment that made the cold burger in my stomach feel like a gourmet meal. The waiter with the Chateau Margaux, the $5,000 bottle of wine, was just about to pour it into Victor Sterling's glass. He saw the manager's signal. He stopped. He tilted the bottle back up. He corked it. And he turned around and walked away. Victor looked up, confused. He reached out for the bottle, but the waiter ignored him. Suddenly, the service stopped. Waiters who were bringing out trays of filet mignon turned around and headed back to the kitchen. The bartenders stopped pouring drinks. The music didn't stop, but the flow of luxury did. It was a beautiful choreography of rejection. I saw Tiffany rush over to Greg. She looked frantic. She grabbed his arm. "What is happening?" she asked. "Why are they taking the wine away?" Greg looked at her with pure panic in his eyes. "The card didn't work," he stammered. "They said it is reported stolen. They said it is fraud." Tiffany's face went white. "Stolen. But Dad gave it to me." "No, sweetheart," I whispered to the screen. "Dad lent it to you, and Dad just took it back." The manager was speaking to them again. He was not whispering anymore. He was loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Mr. Sterling, unless you can provide an alternative form of payment for the outstanding balance of $480,000, immediately we will be forced to shut down this event, and I will have to ask you to wait for the police." Police. The word rippled through the head table. Victor Sterling stood up. He looked furious. He looked at Tiffany with eyes that could kill. "You said he was handled," Victor hissed. "You said you had control of the assets." "I do," Tiffany cried. "I don't know what happened. It must be a glitch." "It is not a glitch, Tiffany. It is a guillotine." I watched them turn on each other. The veneer of class and wealth was peeling away, revealing the greed underneath. They didn't have $500,000 in cash. They were leveraging my money to buy my company. And without my money, they were just grifters in expensive suits. I tapped the screen. I had frozen the money. I had frozen the wine. Now it was time to freeze the room. I switched apps to the venue control system. I found the lighting grid controls. They were arguing. Greg was yelling at the manager. Tiffany was crying. Victor was on his phone, probably trying to move funds that would take days to clear. "Let's shed some light on the situation," I said. I dragged my finger across the brightness slider. Inside the ballroom, the soft mood lighting flickered. And then, with a sudden harsh buzz, the house lights slammed onto 100% brightness. The romantic atmosphere vanished. The room looked stark. The guests blinked in the sudden glare. The dirty dishes looked dirty. The makeup looked heavy. The illusion was gone. And on the giant screen behind them, where the merger logo had been displayed, I prepared my next message. The money was gone. Now it was time for the voice. I sat in the silence of the Bentley watching the chaos unfold on my iPad screen. The ballroom was now flooded with harsh white light, exposing the panic on every face. The guests were murmuring, standing up from their tables, confused by the sudden change in atmosphere and the halted service. But Victor Sterling was a man who did not know how to surrender. I watched him on the screen. He was shouting at the orchestra to keep playing. He was grabbing the merger contract from the podium and shoving a gold pen into Greg's hand. "Sign it!" Victor yelled, his voice distorted by the microphone feedback. "Sign it now, Greg. We will deal with the bank later. It is just a technical glitch. Sign the damn paper." Greg looked terrified. He was sweating under the bright lights. He held the pen, but his hand was shaking. He looked at Tiffany for reassurance. Tiffany was standing frozen. Her face was pale. She looked at the waiters who were clearing the tables. She looked at the manager who was on the phone with the police. And then she looked at the contract. The greed in her eyes battled with the fear. She stepped forward. "Do it, Greg," she hissed. "Sign it before they shut us down. Once we have the company, we can pay for everything 10 times over." I listened to her voice. It was desperate. It was the voice of an addict needing a fix, and the drug was my money. I looked down at my hands. They were resting on the iPad. The control panel for the resort's audio-visual system was still open. I had already cut the music. I had turned on the lights. Now I had one final weapon left, the main projection screen. The massive screen behind them was still displaying the logo, the blue anchor of Blackwood Shipping intertwined with the red shield of Sterling Corp. It was a symbol of my erasure. As long as that image was up, they still felt like they had a future. They still felt like they were in charge. I tapped the text editor icon on the control panel. A blank white box appeared on my screen. A blinking cursor waited for my command. I took a deep breath. The air in the car felt thin. This was it. The moment I had been dreading. The moment I had to choose between being a father and being a man of principle. If I stopped now, I could still save her. I could drive to the resort, walk in, and pay the bill. I could apologize to the guests. I could let the merger happen and retire to a quiet death in a nursing home. Tiffany would be rich. She would be happy for a while. She would visit me once a month and pat my hand and tell me I was a good boy. But it would be a lie. It would be a surrender to evil. And I have never surrendered. I typed the first word. I paused. My finger hovered over the glass. I remembered the day Tiffany was born. I remembered holding her in the hospital room, terrified that I would break her. She was so small, so fragile. I promised her mother that I would always protect her. Am I protecting her now? I asked myself. I looked at the screen. Tiffany was yelling at a waiter who tried to take her glass. She shoved him. No, I am not protecting her. I am enabling a monster. The little girl I held is gone. The woman standing there is a stranger who is trying to sell my blood and sweat for a penthouse. I typed the next words. Maybe old. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The gray hair. The wrinkles, the eyes that had seen too much. Yes, I was old. But age is not weakness. Age is experience. Age is accumulation. And right now, age was the most dangerous thing in the room. I typed faster now, the words flowing from a place of deep, righteous anger. But I still pay the bills. I looked at the bill for the wedding. $500,000. I looked at the bill for her education. $200,000. I looked at the bill for her first house. $1 million. I had paid for every comfort she had ever known. I had paved her road with gold, and she had used that road to drive a knife into my back. Not anymore. I typed the words with force, my finger hitting the glass hard. Not anymore. No more bailouts. No more forgiveness. No more looking the other way. Tonight, the bank of Dad is closed, permanently. I looked at the final command. The cursor blinked, waiting for the execution. Get out. I read the message. It was short. It was brutal. It was the truth. I looked back at the live feed. Greg had the pen on the paper. The tip was touching the signature line. Victor was leaning over him, practically guiding his hand. Tiffany was clapping her hands together, urging him on. Sign it! Greg, she screamed. Sign it! I did not hesitate. I did not flinch. I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. It was the peace of the executioner who knows the sentence is just. I pressed the button marked Override Projection. On my iPad screen, a progress bar appeared. Uploading. 20%, 50%, 80%. In the ballroom, nothing happened for a second. Greg began to write the first letter of his name. The ink flowed onto the page. Then the screen flickered. It was not a subtle flicker. It was a violent digital tear. The image of the merged logos distorted. The blue anchor shattered. The red shield dissolved into static. A loud electronic screech tore through the speakers, making everyone in the room cover their ears. Greg jumped. The pen slipped from his hand and rolled across the stage. Victor spun around, looking at the screen behind him. "What is going on?" he roared. "Fix it! Somebody fix it!" And then the static cleared. The background of the screen turned black, pitch black, like the bottom of the ocean. And then the words appeared. They typed themselves out one by one in massive block letters, bright red, the color of blood, the color of warning. I watched Tiffany's face. She was looking up at the screen. Her mouth opened. Her eyes went wide. The arrogance drained out of her face, instantly replaced by a horror so pure it looked painful. She read the words. I could see her lips moving. "I may be old." The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the room. But I still pay the bills. Greg stepped back from the podium. He looked at the screen, and then he looked at the camera. He knew. He looked right into the lens, right into my eyes, even though he couldn't see me. He knew who was in the room. Not anymore. Victor Sterling turned purple. He realized the game was up. He realized that this wasn't a glitch. This was a message from the grave. This was the man he thought he had buried, digging his way out with a shovel. "Get out." The final words pulsed on the screen. They were huge. They dominated the room. They cast a red glow over the terrified guests. The silence that followed was absolute. The music was gone. The shouting was gone. There was only the hum of the projector and the sound of a legacy crashing to the ground. I sat in my car and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I did it. I had pulled the trigger. I watched as Tiffany collapsed onto the stage. She didn't faint. She just crumbled. She sat on the floor in her expensive silver dress under the red light of my judgment, and she covered her face with her hands. It was the most painful thing I have ever had to watch, but it was necessary. I picked up the phone again. There was one more thing to do. The message was sent. Now it was time to send the messenger. I put the car in drive. I turned on the headlights. The beams cut through the darkness, illuminating the road back to the resort. "I am coming for you, Tiffany," I whispered. "But I am not coming to save you. I am coming to say goodbye." The red letters on the screen burned into the retinas of everyone in the ballroom. I sat in the dark cabin of my car watching the feed on my tablet, and I felt like a judge who had just delivered a death sentence. The silence in the room was heavy. It was the kind of silence that happens right after a bomb goes off, but before the screaming starts. Tiffany was staring up at the message. Her mouth was open in a silent scream. She looked small. The stage that was meant to be her pedestal had become her scaffold. She looked at Greg, but Greg was backing away. He was looking at the exit signs. He was looking anywhere but at her. Victor Sterling was the first to move. He lunged toward the technical booth, waving his arms like a madman. "Cut the feed," he roared, his voice cracking. "Turn it off! Pull the plug!" But there was no plug to pull. The system was locked from the inside. It was locked by me. I tapped the screen of my iPad. I had taken their money. I had taken their pride. Now it was time to take their sight. I slid the master power fader all the way down to 0. In the ballroom, the harsh white work lights that I had turned on just moments ago vanished instantly. The room plunged into absolute pitch-black darkness. The only light came from the emergency exit signs, casting a ghostly green glow over the terrified crowd. Then I hit the audio override. I didn't choose a song. I chose a frequency, a high-pitched oscillating siren that is used for fire alarms and chemical spills. The sound tore through the speakers. It was deafening. On the night vision camera feed, I watched the panic set in. It was instantaneous and primal. These were civilized people. These were bankers and lawyers and socialites who prided themselves on their composure. But strip away the light and blast them with noise, and they become animals. Chairs were overturned, glasses shattered on the floor. People were screaming, pushing, and shoving to get to the doors. The merger was forgotten. The stock price was forgotten. The only thing that mattered was escape. I saw a prominent venture capitalist shove a waiter into a table so he could get to the door faster. I saw the board members of Blackwood shipping men I had trusted for decades trampling over the floral arrangements to flee the sinking ship. It was chaos. And it was beautiful. On the stage, Tiffany was hysterical. She grabbed the microphone stand. She was screaming something, but the siren drowned her out. She was banging on the mic, trying to get order, trying to get attention. But the mic was dead. Her voice didn't carry past the edge of the stage. She was shouting into the void. Victor Sterling grabbed her arm. He wasn't comforting her. He was shaking her. I could see the anger in his body language. He was blaming her. He was screaming in her face, probably asking how she could let this happen, how she could fail so spectacularly. Greg was gone. I scanned the crowd. I saw him near the kitchen entrance. He wasn't waiting for Tiffany. He wasn't helping his father. He was slipping out the back door like the rat he was. Then I saw the flashlights. Beams of white light cut through the darkness near the main entrance. The heavy double doors swung open. It wasn't the guests leaving. It was the police arriving. The resort manager had done exactly what a terrified employee does when a credit card comes back as stolen and the bill is $500,000. He called the cops. He reported a grand larceny in progress. I turned off the siren. The sudden silence was even more shocking than the noise. The room froze. The guests stopped running. Everyone looked at the door. 4 police officers walked in. They looked serious. They looked ready for a riot. Behind them walked the manager, pointing a shaking finger at the stage. "That is them," the manager yelled, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "That is the family. They tried to pay with a stolen card, and now they are destroying the property." The lead officer stepped forward. He shone his flashlight directly onto the stage. The beam hit Victor Sterling in the face, blinding him. Victor put up a hand to shield his eyes. "Do you know who I am?" he bellowed. "I am Victor Sterling. I own half this state. Get that light out of my face." The officer didn't lower the light. He put his hand on his holster. "Sir, step down from the stage," the officer commanded. "Keep your hands where I can see them." "This is outrageous," Victor shouted. "We are the victims here. We are being hacked. My son is marrying the daughter of Thomas Blackwood." "Thomas Blackwood is the one who reported the card stolen," the officer said calmly. "We have a flag from American Express and a report from the cardholder stating unauthorized use of funds. That makes this fraud, sir. And judging by the size of this event, it is felony fraud." Tiffany stepped into the light. Her mascara was running down her face. Her silver dress was rumpled. She looked like a ghost. "Officer, please," she sobbed. "My father is sick. He doesn't know what he is doing. He has dementia. This is all a misunderstanding." The officer looked at her and he didn't see a victim. He saw a suspect. "Ma'am, we can sort out the medical history at the station," the officer said. "But right now we have a venue manager who says he hasn't been paid and a bank telling us the card is stolen. Unless you can produce another form of payment for $500,000 right now, we are going to have to ask you to come with us." I watched Tiffany reach for her purse. She pulled out her own credit cards. She handed them to the manager with shaking hands. "Run these," she pleaded. "Just run them." The manager took them. He walked over to the portable machine the waiter was still holding. He ran the first one. Declined. He ran the second one. Declined. He ran the third one. Declined. I sat in my car and shook my head. Of course they were declined. I had cut off her trust fund access 5 minutes ago. I had frozen every asset attached to the Blackwood name. She didn't have enough money to buy a pack of gum, let alone pay for a wedding. The manager looked at the officer and shook his head. "Okay, folks," the officer said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "That is enough. You are under arrest for theft of services and fraud." I watched as the officer walked up the stairs to the stage. I watched as he grabbed Victor Sterling's wrist. Victor tried to pull away, and the officer spun him around, slamming him against the podium. The crowd gasped. Then another officer approached Tiffany. She backed away. "No," she whispered. "No, please. Daddy. Daddy, help me." She called out for me. In her darkest moment, she didn't call for Greg. She didn't call for Victor. She called for the man she had just tried to erase, but I didn't answer. I couldn't answer. The officer took her wrists. He clicked the metal cuffs onto her. The sound was faint, but I imagined I could hear it. Click, click. The guests were pulling out their phones now. They were filming. The live stream of Tiffany Blackwood being arrested at her own wedding was going to be viral before she even reached the police car. I felt a heavy weight in my chest. It wasn't regret. It was grief. I was grieving the daughter I thought I had. I was grieving the future I thought we would share. But as I watched them lead her down the stairs, past the staring, judging eyes of the people she tried so hard to impress, I knew I had done the right thing. She needed to hit rock bottom, and I was the only one who loved her enough to drop her there. I closed the camera feed on my iPad. The screen went black. I sat in the darkness of the car for a long time. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me feeling tired and old. My knee throbbed. My hands ached. But I wasn't done. I started the engine of the Bentley. The lights of the police cruisers were visible in the distance, flashing blue and red against the trees. I put the car in gear. I wasn't going to the police station. I wasn't going to bail her out. Not tonight. Tonight, she needed to sit in a cell and think about the choices she had made. Tonight, I had another stop to make. I needed to find the one person who hadn't lied to me. I needed to find the woman who had helped me pull the trigger. I drove out of the diner parking lot and headed back toward the city. The road ahead was dark, but for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly where I was going. I sat there in the darkness of the Bentley, staring at the empty driveway, where the police cruiser had just carried my daughter away. My heart felt heavy like a stone, sinking to the bottom of the ocean. I had stopped the merger. I had saved the company, but the cost was my own flesh and blood. I was about to put the car in drive when my phone buzzed one last time. It was Sarah. The message was short. It just said, "Checkmate." Attached to the message was a PDF file. I opened it. The blue light of the screen illuminated the tears that had dried on my cheeks. I zoomed in on the document. I read the text, and then I read it again because I could not believe what I was seeing. I let out a laugh. It was a short, sharp sound. It wasn't a laugh of joy. It was a laugh of disbelief. I looked back at the iPad. The camera feed was still active, but the screen in the ballroom was black. The room was still in chaos. The police were taking statements from the bewildered guests. Victor Sterling was standing near the stage, arguing with the lead officer, trying to distance himself from the fraud. Greg was standing in the shadows near the kitchen door, looking for an exit. He looked like a rat trapped in a burning building. He thought he had escaped. He thought that because Tiffany was the one who signed the checks, she was the only one going down. He thought he could slip away into the night and find another heiress to scam. I looked at the file again. Greg Sterling, the golden boy, the man who stood at the altar and promised to love my daughter until death did them part. He had made that same promise before. 2 years ago, in Las Vegas. I tapped the screen of the iPad. I still had control of the system. I had turned off the lights to create chaos, but now I needed to turn them back on. Because cockroaches hate the light. I slid the master fader up. Inside the ballroom, the lights flickered and then blazed to life. The sudden brightness made everyone stop. The guests shielded their eyes. The police officers looked up. Greg froze. He was hand on the door handle, ready to push it open. The light caught him like a spotlight on a prisoner escaping jail. I tapped the projector control. I cleared the red text that had told them to get out. I uploaded the new file. The screen behind the stage flickered. The black background disappeared. And there, in high definition for everyone to see, was a copy of a marriage certificate from Clark County, Nevada. The names were printed in clear, bold letters. Groom Gregory Victor Sterling. Bride Crystal Marie Davis. Date of marriage June 4, 2022. Status active. The room went silent again. But this silence was different. The first silence was fear. This silence was shock. I zoomed the camera in on Victor Sterling. He stopped arguing with the police officer. He turned slowly to look at the screen. He squinted. He read the names. He pulled a pair of reading glasses from his pocket. He put them on. He read it again. Then he turned to look at Greg. Greg was paralyzed. He was staring at the screen with his mouth open. The color had drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax statue. Victor walked toward him. He didn't run. He walked with a slow, deliberate pace. The crowd parted for him. The police officers stepped back, sensing that this was a family matter that needed to play out before they intervened. Victor stopped 3 feet from his son. "Is it true?" Victor asked. His voice was quiet. It was dangerously quiet. Greg stammered. "Dad, I can explain. It was a weekend in Vegas. We were drunk. I thought we annulled it. I paid a guy to fix it." "You paid a guy," Victor repeated. "You paid a guy to annul a legal marriage." "I thought it was handled," Greg cried. "She promised she wouldn't say anything." Victor closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. "Do you know what this means, you idiot?" Victor said. "It means the marriage to Tiffany would have been void," Greg said, his voice trembling. "But it doesn't matter now, Dad. The merger is dead anyway." "No," Victor roared, his eyes snapping open. "It means that even if Thomas Blackwood hadn't intervened, even if Tiffany had signed those papers, the merger would have been illegal. You committed bigamy. That makes any contract you sign based on this marital union fraudulent by default. We would have spent millions integrating their fleet, only to have the courts strip it all away the moment this bimbo from Vegas showed up looking for alimony." "Dad, please," Greg begged, backing up against the wall. "I was going to divorce her. I just needed time." "You didn't need time," Victor spat. "You needed a brain." Victor took a step closer. He looked at his son with pure, unadulterated disgust. "I spent 40 years building the Sterling name," Victor said. "I crushed competitors. I bought senators. I built an empire that was supposed to last for generations. And I entrusted it to you." "Dad, I am sorry," Greg whispered. Victor didn't say anything else. He raised his hand. The slap echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. It was a backhanded strike, violent and dismissive. It caught Greg across the jaw, sending him stumbling sideways. He tripped over a chair and fell hard onto the floor. He scrambled to get up, holding his cheek, looking up at his father with tears in his eyes. But Victor didn't look down. He adjusted his cufflinks. He straightened his jacket. He turned to the police officer. "Officer Victor," said, his voice cold and steady, "I would like to revise my statement. I had no knowledge of my son's prior marriage or his financial dealings regarding this event. I am a victim of his deception just as much as Mr. Blackwood is." Greg gasped. "Dad, what are you doing?" Victor ignored him. He looked at the officer. "If he has committed bigamy, that is a felony, is it not?" "Yes, sir," the officer said, eyeing Greg. "It is a Class E felony in this state." "Then do your duty," Victor said. Victor turned around. He walked toward the exit. He walked past his son, who was still on the floor, reaching out for him. He didn't look back. He didn't hesitate. He walked out of the ballroom and out of his son's life. I watched Greg crumble. The arrogance was gone. The charm was gone. He was just a boy who had been abandoned by his creator. The police officer walked over to Greg. He pulled out another pair of handcuffs. "Gregory Sterling," the officer said, pulling Greg up by his arm. "You are under arrest for bigamy and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent." I watched them lead him away. He was crying. He was looking around the room, searching for a friendly face, but there were none. The investors looked at him with disdain. The staff looked at him with anger. He was alone. I sat back in my seat. My breathing was slow and deep. The stage was empty now. The screen was still displaying the marriage certificate, a digital monument to their stupidity. The takeover was over. The enemy was destroyed. Tiffany was in one car. Greg was in another. Victor was alone in his limousine, plotting his next move, but he was wounded. His reputation would never recover from this. The street talks. And tomorrow the street would know that Victor Sterling raised a fool. I picked up the iPad. I closed the connection. The screen went black. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. You cannot be happy when your family is in ruins. But it was relief. It was the feeling of setting down a heavy load after carrying it for too long. I had cut out the cancer. It hurt. It left a scar. But the body would survive. I looked at the dashboard of the Bentley. The wood grain was smooth and solid. The clock ticked steadily. I started the engine. The powerful motor hummed to life, ready to take me anywhere I wanted to go. I had one more stop to make. Sarah was waiting. And after that, I had a lot of work to do. I had to rebuild a company. I had to create a new legacy. One that wasn't built on blood, but on something stronger. I shifted the car into drive. I didn't look back at the resort. The show was over. And for the first time in a long time, Thomas Blackwood was free. The Bentley glided down the highway, purring like a large metal cat, satisfied with its hunt. I was miles away from the Ocean Cliff Resort, but in my mind, I was still standing in the center of that ballroom, looking at the wreckage. The police had cleared out. The guests had fled, leaving behind their expensive gift bags and their half-eaten dinners. The staff had retreated to the kitchen, afraid to touch anything until the crime scene unit finished their work. The silence in the car was heavy. It was the kind of silence that rings in your ears after a loud explosion. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I tried to relax them. I tried to tell myself it was over. The enemy was defeated. The company was safe. But then the phone rang. It sat on the passenger seat, lighting up the dark cabin with a harsh white glow. I knew who it was before I looked. There was only one person left in that building who would call me. Tiffany. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the red decline button. I should have pressed it. I should have let it ring until it went to voicemail, and then I should have deleted the voicemail without listening. That is what a smart businessman would do. Cut the loss, write off the asset, move on. But I am not just a businessman. God help me, I am a father. And the habit of answering that call, the habit of being the one who fixes things, is a hard addiction to break. I pressed the green button. I put the phone to my ear. I did not say hello, I just listened. At first there was only the sound of breathing. Ragged, hyperventilating breaths. It sounded like a wounded animal caught in a trap. Daddy. The word came out as a sob. It was broken. It was small. It was the voice of the 6-year-old girl who scraped her knee on the playground and needed me to kiss it better. For a split second, my heart clenched. For a split second, I wanted to turn the car around. "Daddy, please," she cried. "Please come back. You cannot leave me here. Everyone is gone." I kept my eyes on the road. The yellow lines flashed by in a hypnotic rhythm. "I am not coming back, Tiffany," I said. My voice was calm. It surprised me how calm it was. It sounded like I was talking to a stranger. "But I am all alone," she wailed. "Greg left. The police took him. And Victor looked at me like I was garbage and walked out. They left me here, Daddy. They left me with the bill. They left me with the mess." I tightened my grip on the wheel. "They left you because you were no longer useful to them," I said. "That is how parasites work, Tiffany. When the host stops bleeding, they move on to the next victim." "But I did not know," she screamed. Her voice was shrill now, rising in panic. "I swear to you, Daddy, I did not know about his other wife. I did not know he was a fraud. I am a victim too. He lied to me. He used me to get to your money. You have to believe me." I listened to her lies. They tumbled out of her mouth one after another, desperate and clumsy. She was rewriting history in real time, trying to paint herself as the innocent flower crushed by wicked men. "Stop it," I said. The command was sharp. It cut through her sobbing. "Daddy," she whispered. I said, "Stop it," I repeated. "Do not insult my intelligence. Not tonight. Not after everything you have done." "I did not do anything," she pleaded. "I was in love. Love makes you blind. Love does not make you forge a medical document," I said. "Love does not make you hire a crooked doctor to declare your father mentally incompetent. Love does not make you negotiate a 30% cut of a merger deal while your father is supposedly losing his mind." There was silence on the other end of the line. The kind of silence that comes when the truth hits a liar in the face. "I heard you, Tiffany," I continued. "I heard you on the microphone. I heard you ask Victor for the penthouse. I heard you say that dealing with me was exhausting. I heard you laugh about selling the fleet. That was not Greg. That was not Victor. That was you." She sniffled. "But Daddy, I was just saying that. I had to play along. I was trying to protect the legacy." "You were trying to liquidate the legacy," I said. "You looked at my life's work and you saw a paycheck. You looked at me and you saw an obstacle. You picked a side, Tiffany. You chose the Sterlings. You bet against the house. And you lost." "Daddy, please," she cried again, her voice breaking. "I have nothing. My cards are declined. They are going to kick me out. Where will I go? I cannot go back to the penthouse. You changed the locks, didn't you?" "Yes," I said. "I changed the locks, and I canceled the lease on your apartment, and I revoked the trust." "So I am homeless," she whispered. "You are making your own daughter homeless. You are 30 years old, Tiffany. You have a master's degree that I paid for. You have connections. You have health. You are not homeless. You are just poor. There is a difference. Millions of people figure it out every day. You will have to be one of them." "But I am your daughter," she screamed. "You owe me. You brought me into this world. You owe me protection." "I protected you for 30 years," I said. "I protected you from cold, from hunger, from work, from reality. And look what it produced. It produced a woman who would sell her own father for a seat at a table with thieves. I am done protecting you, Tiffany. The only way you will ever learn to walk is if I stop carrying you." "Daddy, wait," she sobbed. "Just send a car. Just pay the hotel bill. Please. I am scared. It is dark in here. The staff are looking at me. They hate me. They hate you because you treated them like servants," I said. "They hate you because you tried to cheat them out of their wages." "Sit in that discomfort, Tiffany. Let it burn. Maybe it will cauterize the rot in your soul, Daddy," she whispered. I love you. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. That was the last arrow in her quiver. The weaponized I love you. You do not love me, I said softly. You love what I can give you. You love the safety. You love the status. But you do not love Thomas Blackwood. Because if you loved me, you would have come to the gate. You would have defended me when they called me crazy. You would have chosen me. Daddy, no. The conversation is over, I said. You tried to play a game with the big boys, Tiffany. You thought you were a player. But you were just a chip. And now the dealer has swept the table. What does that mean? She asked, her voice trembling. It means the price of betrayal is 0, I said. You get nothing. No money, no house, no company. You start from 0. Good luck, Tiffany. Daddy, wait, do not hang up. I pulled the phone away from my ear. I could still hear her tiny, tinny voice screaming my name. I pressed the red button. The call ended. I immediately went into the settings. I found her contact. I scrolled down to the bottom. I pressed block caller. I put the phone back on the seat. I took a deep breath. It felt like I had just cut off my own arm. It hurt. It hurt more than anything I had ever felt. But I knew the bleeding would stop eventually. And I knew that if I didn't do it, the infection would kill me. Back at the resort, Tiffany stared at her phone. The screen had gone dark. She tapped it frantically, but there was no signal. No answer. Just her own reflection, staring back at her in the black glass. She stood up. Her legs were shaky. She looked around the vast, empty ballroom. The decorations she had spent months choosing looked like garbage now. The white hydrangeas were wilting. The crystal glasses were overturned. She was truly alone. She started to walk toward the exit. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering in the cold air conditioning. She needed to find a taxi. She needed to find a friend who would lend her a couch. She needed to get out of this place. But as she reached the double doors, they swung open. She stopped. Hope flared in her chest. Maybe it was her father. Maybe he had turned around. Maybe he had sent a driver. But it was not a driver. It was a man in a gray wool coat. He was holding a leather briefcase. He had silver hair and a face that looked like it was carved out of granite. It was Arthur Miller. My lawyer. Tiffany took a step back. Mr. Miller, she stammered. Did Dad send you? Is he here? Miller did not smile. He did not offer his hand. He walked up to her and stopped. He opened his briefcase. He pulled out a thick envelope. It was not a wedding gift. Your father is not here, Ms. Blackwood Miller said. His voice was professional and dry. He asked me to deliver this to you personally. Tiffany reached out and took the envelope. Her hands were shaking so bad she almost dropped it. What is it? She whispered. Is it a check? Is it money? Miller closed his briefcase. It is a court summons, Miller said. Summons, Tiffany blinked. For what? For medical fraud, Miller said. Conspiracy to falsify legal documents, and a petition for the repayment of misappropriated corporate funds. Tiffany looked at the envelope. She looked at Miller. Her knees gave out. She slumped against the doorframe, sliding down until she hit the cold marble floor. Prison, she whispered. He is sending me to prison. He is leaving that up to a judge, Miller said. He turned around. He didn't offer to help her up. He didn't offer her a ride. He walked back out into the night, leaving the door open behind him. The wind blew in from the ocean. It was cold and salty. It blew through the ruined ballroom, rustling the tablecloths and chilling the bride who had sold her soul for a wedding that never happened. Tiffany Blackwood sat on the floor, clutching the lawsuit to her chest, and for the first time in her life she cried real tears, not for the camera, not for the audience, but for the realization that she had gambled everything on greed and she had lost the only thing that really mattered: a father's love. It has been 30 days since the lights went out at the Ocean Cliff Resort. 30 days since I watched my daughter get led away in handcuffs. 30 days since I cut the dead weight from my life. People ask me if I am lonely. They ask how a 70-year-old man copes with the silence of an empty penthouse. They look at me with pity, thinking I am sitting in the dark, mourning the family I lost. They are wrong. I have never been less lonely in my life. I am sitting in a private room at Le Bernardin in Manhattan. The table is not set for 3 people. It is set for 12. On my right sits Sarah. She is wearing a new dress. She is smiling. She is the new Chief Operating Officer of Blackwood Shipping. She earned it. She saved the company. She saved me. Around the rest of the table are 10 young men and women. They are not rich. They do not have famous last names. They are wearing suits that they probably bought at a discount store, but their shirts are pressed and their eyes are bright. These are the recipients of the first annual Blackwood Scholarship. They are engineering students, logistics majors, future captains of industry who actually care about the work, not just the reward. I look at a young man named Marcus across the table. He is 19. He grew up in foster care. He works 2 jobs to put himself through school. He reminds me of myself 50 years ago. Hungry, determined, grateful. Mr. Blackwood, Marcus says, his voice respectful but steady. I just want to say thank you. This scholarship, it changes everything for me. I promise I will not let you down. I smile. It is a genuine smile, the kind that reaches your eyes. I know you won't, Marcus, I say. Because if you do, Sarah will fire you faster than she fired my former board of directors. The table laughs. It is a warm sound. It is the sound of respect and camaraderie. It is the sound of a family being built, not by blood, but by shared values. I take a sip of my wine. It tastes better than the $5,000 bottle Greg tried to drink at the wedding. It tastes like freedom. I glance at the television screen mounted discreetly in the corner of the room. The news is playing on mute. The headline flashes across the bottom. Victor Sterling indicted on 12 counts of securities fraud. I watch the footage. Victor is walking out of a courthouse. He looks smaller. He is hiding his face from the cameras. His empire is crumbling. The investigation into the merger revealed years of cooked books and illegal trades. He tried to eat me and he choked. And Greg is gone. He posted bail and vanished. Some say he is in Mexico. Some say he is in Thailand. I do not care. He is a ghost, a bad memory that fades a little more every time the sun rises. And then there is Tiffany. The room goes quiet for a moment in my head as I think of her. I saw her yesterday. I did not speak to her. I watched her from the car. She is working at a diner in Queens. She is wearing a uniform that is too big for her. She looks tired. Her hair is tied back in a messy bun. She was scrubbing a table. A customer yelled at her because his coffee was cold. She did not yell back. She did not throw a tantrum. She apologized. She went to get a fresh pot. It was hard to watch. Part of me wanted to go in there. Part of me wanted to put a check on the table and fix it all. But I stayed in the car. She needs this. She needs to know what it feels like to earn $1. She needs to know that respect is not given, it is worked for. She is currently under investigation for the medical fraud, but the district attorney is going easy on her because she is cooperating against Victor. She might avoid prison, but she will not avoid the struggle. I hope one day she finds her way back. I hope one day she knocks on my door, not as a princess demanding a castle, but as a woman who has built her own house. Until then, I will watch from a distance. I will love her enough to let her grow up. Mr. Blackwood. Sarah touches my arm, bringing me back to the dinner. Are you ready to make the announcement? I nod. I stand up. The table goes silent. 10 pairs of eager eyes look at me. I clear my throat. I want to propose a toast, I say, raising my glass. For a long time, I thought that legacy was about what you leave behind in your will. I thought it was about passing down a name and a bank account. I was wrong. I look at Marcus. I look at Sarah. Legacy is not what you keep. It is what you give away. Today, I signed the paperwork to transfer 90% of my assets into the Blackwood Foundation. My ships will keep sailing. My company will keep growing. But the profits will no longer go to buying penthouses and yachts. They will go to you. They will go to building schools, to cleaning the oceans, to giving a chance to people who actually deserve it. I see tears in Sarah's eyes. I see shock on the students' faces. You are my legacy now, I say. Do not make me regret it. We drink. The clinking of glasses sounds like bells ringing in a new era. After dinner, I walk outside into the cool New York night. The air is crisp. The city lights are bright. I walk to my Bentley. It is parked at the curb, shining under the street lamps. I get in. I sit in the driver's seat. It is the same seat where I sat and watched my life fall apart a month ago. But tonight it feels different. It feels like a cockpit. I look at the empty passenger seat. It is not empty. It is filled with possibility. I start the engine. The rumble is deep and reassuring. I drove away from the wedding thinking I had lost everything. But I realize now that I didn't lose anything. I just took out the trash. I have my dignity, I have my company, and I have a future that I chose. I pull out into traffic, merging with the flow of the city. I am Thomas Blackwood. I am 70 years old, and I am just getting started. Family is a strange word. We use it to describe the people we are stuck with, the people who share our DNA. But that is just biology. That is just an accident of birth. I look at the city skyline one last time. Family is not the blood that runs in your veins. Family is the people who hold the bandage when you are bleeding. Family are the ones who stand by you when the credit card is declined and the lights go out. I found my family. And for the first time in a long time, I am going home to a house that is full of peace. We often think that we must tolerate toxicity just because it comes from a parent, a child, or a sibling. We let them drain us emotionally and financially because we are afraid of breaking the bond of blood. But this story teaches us that true loyalty is a two-way street. You cannot save someone who is actively trying to destroy you. Thomas Blackwood learned that setting boundaries is not an act of hate, it is an act of self-preservation. Sometimes you have to let people hit rock bottom so they can learn how to stand up on their own. Respect yourself enough to walk away from tables where respect is no longer served. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments below, have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save your own peace? I read every single comment. My name is Thomas, and I will see you in the next story.